Alright everybody, we are going to wrap up this relatively short module by introducing another important concept called confidence intervals. Like a lot of concepts that we introduce, they can apply to a great many hypothesis tests or situations. This is not something that's just about single sample t-tests. This is just a logical point to introduce them because this might be one of the simplest tests where we would run a confidence interval. So this stuff applies to lots of other findings, lots of other tests. We just bring it up here because that's the best fit for introducing it as an idea. So here's the premise of a confidence interval. We reject the null. That's good, right? That's what we want to happen usually as researchers. So when we reject the null, essentially what we're concluding is that the sample that we have, which represents population 1, is different. That population that it's coming from is different than population 2, our basis of comparison. That same idea of mu1 does not equal mu2. When you reject the null in that kind of test, you're concluding, hey, the population that sample came from, which usually is people that were changed in some way or in some different group of interest, they are coming from a different population with a different mean than our basis of comparison. So again, that's basically the logic of rejecting the null. Here's the thing, though. That population 1, we never really know what its population mean was, or it'd be a very quick test. If we knew both mu1 and mu2, the hypothesis test would take 2 seconds. Are they different? Yes, they are. Great, we reject the null. Because we're representing it by a sample mean, there's uncertainty involved there. We know that our sample mean, even if it's gathered in a way that meets all the criteria for good sampling and all that fun stuff, we know it's not going to be exactly the same as the population mean. Probably not. It's probably going to be at least a little bit different. So confidence intervals are designed to account for that. We know that sample means tend to differ from the population means they represent, sometimes by a little, less often by a bit more than that, once in a great while by a lot. So is there a better way to estimate the population mean without getting any new information at all? One way we could do it is just get more data. Again, those means become more accurate as you measure more people. But if your test is already done, that's not really going to happen. So the point of confidence intervals is to try to come up with a better way to estimate mu. Again, we don't know anything new about the population. All we actually have is our sample data that we're using to represent that population. But what we can do is calculate a confidence interval for that population mean. Basically, a confidence interval is a range of scores where we have some amount of confidence that the real parameter, the real population mean, is somewhere in that interval. So confidence interval is a range of values, and we say, gosh, we don't know exactly what the population mean is, but we have a high degree of confidence it's somewhere in between these two lines. So confidence intervals are contrasted with what are called point estimates. Point estimates are individual scores that are just one number. You're estimating a population mean by one number, which is the sample mean. A confidence interval, again, adds nuance to that by saying the parameter is probably not exactly the same as the sample mean, but it's almost certainly somewhere between these two numbers. So the degree of confidence we use in our confidence intervals is attached to alpha. It is 1 minus alpha. So with a standard alpha of 0.05, our confidence interval that we would make from that would be a 95% confidence interval. If alpha is 0.01, we can create a 99% confidence interval, and so on and so forth. So again, what that 95% means is that you have 95% confidence that the real parameter is somewhere in that interval. So as I mentioned, using the sample mean by itself is what's called a point estimate. Confidence intervals give us a type of interval estimate, a range of scores. So again, we're more likely to capture the real population mean in that interval than we are with just a single point, just one specific number that we say that's our best estimate, and there you go. You can use confidence intervals in lots of other places than t-tests. The book talks a bit about using them for correlations, for example. They are more and more common to report for a lot of different common hypothesis tests. So here's the confidence interval for the population mean. It involves information that we would already have from running the test. We have a sample mean, we have that estimated standard error, and we have the critical t-score, the one we got in step 3, that critical value. Basically, we take that sample mean, we multiply the standard error by the critical t-value, we add that to the sample mean. That gives us what's called the upper limit, or the UL. Let's try not to knock this down. And then we subtract that same number from the sample mean, and that gives us what's called the lower limit. So again, the logic behind this is that a t-score is a measure of standard errors from the mean. We're kind of undoing this process there by saying, okay, that sample mean, what is sort of the beginning and the ending point of the range of scores where we have 95% confidence that the real parameter is in there. So with an alpha of 0.05, scores that don't exceed t-crit are the remaining 95% of that distribution. Basically, we are doing a very similar process there. We're looking at what 95% of the distribution of outcomes where that sample mean is dead center, what that 95% would look like, what would be the minimum and the maximum. So for our last data set, remember the dog data set, we had a sample mean of 50.6. We had a critical t-score of plus and minus 2.776, and the standard error was 0.92. So that's all data from our last example with the dogs. We could create a confidence interval for that estimate, the percentage of correctly identified dog sexes. And again, we plug in our standard error, our t-crit, we add that to 50.6, which gives us 53.15. We subtract that result from 50.6, which gives us 48.05. What is this telling us very literally? And saying we have 95% confidence that the population mean of correctly identified dog genders is somewhere between those two numbers. It might not be exactly 50.6. We think it's somewhere between 53.15 and 48.05. One of the neat things about confidence intervals, if you know a confidence interval, you can actually figure out if you have a significant result or not. If the confidence interval or your mean at the alpha level that you chose doesn't include that mu2, the mean of the population we're comparing that sample mean to, then we conclude there's a statistically significant result. It means it's outside of that 95% range. So it's outside of that 95% interval for the mu2. Notice in this case, our mu2 is 50%. That is very much within the range of scores here in our confidence interval, which indicates that we do not have a statistically significant result. So you can calculate a confidence interval for basically anything, but we really just wind up doing it for means. Sometimes in more advanced forms of research, they'll do it for measures of variability, but for our purposes, it's really only going to happen with those sample means. So you can do it for standard deviation or standard error. Here is a use of confidence intervals that you've already seen. Anytime you see polling happening, when there's a political race or something like that, they're going to poll how many people support one candidate versus another, right? So they usually come out with a result, and let's say we'll just call them candidate A and candidate B, just for simplicity's sake. And let's say that a poll comes out and says that candidate A is up by 2. So that's what we might call a point estimate. They're obviously not measuring every single voter, they're only measuring a sample of them. So again, that's what the result is in the sample. The sample prefers candidate A by 2 points, but we know the population probably isn't exactly the same as that. So a lot of times what you'll see at the bottom of these polls is something that looks like this, the letters M-O-E. Let's do it down here. And it's usually plus or minus 3 or 4 points. So plus or minus 3 or 4 points refers to what's called the margin of error, and that is a confidence interval. It's almost always a 95% confidence interval. Basically, it's saying we have 95% confidence that the real state of affairs in the population is within 3 points of this margin. What that means in this case, if the point estimate is A is up by 2 and there's a margin of error, we'll say 3 points. That means they're saying we have 95% confidence that the real result is somewhere between A being up by 5 points, that's 3 points higher than the current margin, or A being down by 1 point, candidate B being up by 1 point. So they're saying the best data we have, the best estimate we have is that candidate A is up 2, but we know there's uncertainty there. The real result is somewhere between candidate A being down 1 and up 5. If you see polls like that reported, sometimes they'll be referred to as a statistical tie. That's not exactly right, but when the confidence interval includes a tied result, that basically means that we can't fully reject the null. It still means it's more likely than not that candidate A is up, but we can't reject the null hypothesis that the race is tied because it's still in that confidence interval. Another use of confidence intervals that you might have seen when we have, unfortunately, things like tornadoes. Let's do a little bit of board work here. When you have tornadoes, you see a weather map when there's a tornado warning. They'll say, hey, here's the tornado. And they usually draw a shape that looks something like this. And they say, anybody that's in that shape there, you need to get to shelter right away. You need to get safe because that is a possible path that tornado is going to take. Here's the thing, not everybody in that shape gets hit by the tornado, fortunately. There's nowhere near enough room. It can only pass through a fraction of that shape. But what that shape is it reflects a confidence interval for predicting what path the tornado is going to take. Everybody in this square, not everybody's going to get hit by the tornado. Most of them won't, but they are in the different possible paths that tornado could take, so they need to take precautions. I would bet that this is not a 95% confidence interval. I'm not a meteorologist or anything like that. But I would bet they don't use 95% confidence intervals. You don't want 1 in 20 tornadoes slipping outside of there and hitting people outside of that shape. I would guess it's a 99.9% confidence interval or something similar to it. You want to err on the side of keeping as many people safe as possible. But that little shape that's charting possible future paths is representing confidence intervals. The most likely path is somewhere in the middle, but we're accounting for the range of possible paths that it can take. So, to summarize the entire module, we used the z-test in the prior module. We use that when we know the variance of population 2, what we're comparing our sample to. The t-test for a single sample is used when you know the mean of that population 2, but you do not know the variance. Some key differences, you've got to estimate those variability figures, the standard deviation converted into a standard error. We do that using sample data. We have different ways of getting the critical value, but again, on your exams, you'll be copying down numbers that I just give you, so it's not something that mechanically is going to change much for you. And the t-statistic changes a little bit, but it's still very, very similar to the z-statistic. Confidence intervals, what we talked about today, can be used to add more information, more nuance to any estimate of a population parameter. So we usually use this for means. Again, we learned a little bit about how to do that in practice. We generally just use it for means and just for estimating population means. But should you progress and do more advanced research, you will probably eventually see confidence intervals used for other population parameters as well. All right, that's the end of this unit, the end of this module, but also of this unit. Next up, there is a practice quiz. There is a homework assignment you can complete, and you'll want to prepare for the entirety of the second exam, which covers modules 5 through 8. Good luck preparing, and I will see you on the other side of that exam when we start off our third unit.